Since the late 20th century, the U.S. Commonwealth of Virginia has recognized 11 Native American tribes, including the Monacan Indian Nation. And legislation granting the Monacan and 5 other Virginia tribes official status was enacted by the U.S. Congress in January 2018. Previously, they had been so upended by discrimination, intermarriage, land loss, and conflict that the majority community thought they were no longer Indian. The Monacans, however, restructured and made their civilization known. Jamestown immigrants in colonial Virginia were the first to mention the Monacan country as existing upland and west of the Tidewater region. They speak Siouan as their first language. They share ancestry with the Tutelo, Saponi, and Occaneechi, as well as other Siouan-speaking tribes of the Appalachian foothill region. By the 18th century, one of their old settlements, upriver of the James River Falls, had been abandoned, and the property had been given to Huguenot immigrants who kept the town's name, Monacan. Today, the historic Piedmont area, especially Amherst County near Lynchburg, is home to the majority of the Monacan Nation. There were about 2,000 people living in the Monacan Indian Nation as of 2018. Ohio, Tennessee, Maryland, and West Virginia all have satellite groups. The Jamestown settlers discovered that the Piedmont region between the fall line, where modern Richmond grew, and the Blue Ridge Mountains was ruled by the James River Monacan and their northern Manahoac allies on the Rappahannock River when they first explored the James River in May 1607. The 30 Algonquian-speaking tribes who made up the Powhatan Confederacy, which dominated most of the Tidewater and coastal plain, were fierce rivals of the Monacan. Captain Christopher Newport was convinced not to go into Monacan territory past the James River Falls by the Werowance Parahunt, son of Supreme Chief Powhatan of the Powhatan Confederacy. But in November 1608, the resolute Newport ventured into Monacan territory. The settlers discovered 2 Monacan settlements along the James River's banks during a 40-mile, 64-kilometer march upstream. They named them Messinacock and Moamancho. The Monacan mostly disregarded them and carried on with their lives, in contrast to the Powhatan, who had lavishly welcomed the newcomers. Their chief was taken prisoner by the newcomers and made to lead them around his domain. Newport's trip to the Monacan villages included Peter Wynne, who wrote to John Egerton on November 26, 1608, to let him know that some of the group thought the Monacans' language sounded like Welsh, which Wynne spoke. Wynne was requested to serve as an interpreter by Newport, but he was unable to grasp the language because it was not Welsh. Moamancho, the easternmost outpost of the Monacan Nation, was located in the eastern extremity of modern-day Powhatan County, between Jones Creek and Bernards Creek, upriver of the James River Falls. A mile south of modern-day Goochland, Messinacock, was located more upriver at the mouth of Mohawk Creek. Rosawek, the capital of the Monacans, was situated at the junction of the upper James and Rivanna Rivers' 2 branches, known as the Point of Fork. Their tributaries were the Monahassanon, later known as the Nahasan, i.e. Tutelo, whose village was located farther upstream on the James River close to what became Wingana, and the Monassukapano, later known as the Saponi, who lived upstream on the Rivanna River close to what is now Charlottesville. The Siouan Manahoac to the north were closely linked to all of these people. By setting a camp close to the James Falls in 1656, several hundred Nahisan, Mohawk, and Rechahecrians, possibly Iroquoian-speaking Erie from modern-day Pennsylvania, threatened the settlers as well as the Powhatan tribes. To drive them away, a Powhatan and settlers' joint army was dispatched. In the ensuing conflict, Totopotomoy, the Pamunkey leader, was killed. In the past, the Erie and Monacan were trading partners, particularly in copper. When John Lederer and Major Harris visited the Monacan settlements of Mohamancho and Mohawk in 1670, they discovered that the men were armed with muskets and that they were still inhabited. According to their story, which Lederer documented, they were driven from the northwest by an enemy tribe and settled in the area 400 years ago because of an oracle. They informed him that they had discovered it inhabited by the Doeg, whom they finally drove out while teaching them how to cultivate grain. From 4 women, Bizimers Posh, Sepoy, Askaran, and Maraskaran, they derive the race of mankind, which they therefore divide into 4 tribes, distinguished under those several names. he said in his account of another Monacan story. There were only roughly 30 bowmen or fighters in the tribe at the time of Lederer's visit, out of a possible 100 people. The Staunton River settlements of Sapon and Pinahai were also mentioned by Lederer. In 1671, Batson Fallum named the latter place Hanahaski. According to Swanton, an ethnologist from the 20th century, this last is a Nahassan settlement. The Nahassan people landed on an island upriver of the Occaneechi people, near the meeting point of the Stanton and Dan rivers, about 1675. After Bacon's rebellion, the Treaty of Middle Plantation was signed in 1677 by a number of Aboriginal people, including the Monacan leader, Sure Enough. In 1684, the Pamunkey and Virginian immigrants came across them, along with the Manahoac on the North Anna and Upper Mattapony rivers. Because to European expansion, the Monacan had left their country by 1699 and relocated farther away. In 1700 and 1701, French Huguenot immigrants arrived on both banks of the James River after being awarded a large portion of the old Moamencho site by the Virginia House of Burgesses. The Virginia colonial authorities compelled them to live over the falls after first promising them land in Jamestown. They founded the communities of Monacan and Sabat in Goochland County, which is now Monacan Sabat, Virginia. The core remnant appears to have blended with the Nahassan and other closely related Virginia Siouan tribes, by then commonly referred to as Tutelo Saponi, while a few Monacan continued to live in the region as late as 1702. The majority of the tribe may be traced back to Virginia, Fort Christiana, 1714, and North Carolina, 1702, under this collective name. Some moved north to join the Iroquois around the Great Lakes for safety. By 1740, they were known in Pennsylvania, Shamokin. By 1753, they had joined the Cayuga at Corriorganell in western New York. As British allies against the Patriots, several joined them in the American Revolutionary War. Many Monacan migrated to Canada with the Iroquois following the battle, settling in the Grand River First Nations Six Nation Reserve in modern-day Ontario. In 1779, it was stated that they had settled in Tutelo Heights. Through intermarriage, the Cayuga tribe in Ontario had entirely assimilated their descendants by the early 20th century. It is thought that smaller bands broke out in North Carolina and at other points throughout Virginia. Several sizable pre-existing mounds were observed by the new European colonists in the meantime. In 1784, Thomas Jefferson excavated a portion of a burial mound on the Rivanna River, close to the former Montezuma-Panoff, which he later mentioned in his notes on the state of Virginia. According to contemporary archaeologists, this mound may have housed up to 1,000 people. Rapidan was the name of another excavated mound on the Rapidan River, close to the settlement of Stagara. The majority of the remaining mounds, however, were located more to the west, such as Bowman on the North Fork of the Shenandoah River and the northernmost mound at Brumback on the South Fork. Additional mounds were located at John East in Lewis Creek prior to their merging into the Shenandoah River's South Fork. There were two more mounds at Hayes Creek in Bell on the Maury River upriver of the James's confluence, Clover Creek in Withrow on the Cow Pasture River prior to the Upper James's confluence, and Hirsch on the Jackson River prior to the James's confluence close to the headwaters. One group that has been speculated to be Welsh Indians since Peter Wynn's trip in 1608 is the Monacan. NS consider it as myth and have not discovered any proof. The Siouan language family included the Monacan language. William Johns, an ancestor of part of the present-day Monacan, bought 452 acres, 1.83 square kilometers, of property on Bear Mountain between 1831 and 1833 for a community of his family members. 29 families were listed there in the 1850 census. Native Americans in Virginia intermarried with African Americans and Europeans over time. White people thought it meant they were no longer Indian, but they were wrong. Virginia established a binary system of racial classification as either black or white until in 1924 when it approved the Racial Integrity Act. The one-drop rule, which mandates that everyone with any known African heritage be classified as black, was also added. Despite the fact that certain families had long been listed as Indian, the director of the Vital Records Department persisted on reclassifying them as black. Due to this program's disregard for social and cultural identity and its disruption of decades' worth of documents, American Indians in Virginia lost their historical continuity. However, in order to recover their status as Native Americans, they regrouped in the 20th century while retaining their culture and community.